brain, it's probably going to take a year or two. But to really reap the benefit of where you start feeling like you're, this really relaxed feeling, that could be just a matter of a few weeks, where you just feel a huge difference, where a lot of stuff you're not keeping in your head anymore. So big difference. So one trick I learned quickly was I better put the weekly review in my calendar and make it an appointment with myself. So higher level stuff I wouldn't really worry about until like you've done this for 3 to 6 months. But after that, you should be looking at what are your goals for the for the year, for the rest of the year. What's your roadmap for the next few months and so on. But until you've gotten your project list and all that under control, the higher level stuff won't really matter stuff anyway, because you won't be able to really get there. So once you have a system that you trust, the key thing is resist keeping things in your head. Resist going back to your old behaviors. Not easy for the first few weeks. It'll take you at least, I think 2 to 4 weeks until you just get used to the very notion initially of only working from lists. And if you have a good idea in your head, I've seen people do things, and I've done this, where I was so resistant to the idea, I was so afraid of going back to working out of my head, that I would take something I was about to do or that I'd just done, I would put it into my action list and I would check it off, just so I could get credit for having done that thing. But it really does help, and after a while you start really trusting your lists of phone calls to make, errands to run, etc. It becomes natural to work that way. And then you start annoying your friends by telling them, well, don't keep that stuff in your head. So we had this great planning meeting yesterday. I was like really forceful to everyone, like, write everything down. And then it turns out there's a phone number for someone where we missed a digit. But we wouldn't have caught that unless we really worked on writing everything down. So isn't that what your teachers told you in school? That's what my teachers told me, is write it down. And it turns out to be very true. All right, so basically the more you trust the system, the more you keep working the system, the more you'll trust it and the more effective you'll be. So it's sort of a good cycle, hopefully. So the end state here that you want to achieve is what David talks about as mind like water, which is a reference you find often in martial arts and meditation and so on. It means being in a state where you're completely in the zone, completely relaxed, and you're basically ready for whatever shows up, or whatever idea or new thing that you generate. You don't have any other noise in your head that's pulling on you, and there's nothing mystical about this. It's very scientific. There are people in cognitive science research who are studying this. There's a great paper on the David Allen Company website, davidco.com, that talks about this. And essentially, it's just you're freeing up capacity in your brain to work on things where your attention wants to be directed, rather than distracting yourself or being distracted from the outside with things you can't handle. So once you're in that state, or the more you're in that state, the more you feel safe. You feel safe in terms of being crazy and creative and not spinning out of control. And for me, in terms of my life, the practical change that's made is more courage to do more stuff, try new things. I used to do one venture at a time, and now I'm doing like 4 at the same time. And I'm adding more to my portfolio. And I don't care if a bunch of them fail. I'm just going to do more because I know I can manage them now. And actually, this is not always a good thing, because you can be reckless sometimes. But I'm willing to kind of go out all the way on a limb and try a bunch of new stuff. So it's kind of like, you're just sowing seeds out there, and who knows what will come out of those things. And for my life, that's what GTD has done. I have other folks, or friends and colleagues who've experienced similar things. And that might take you a couple of years to get there, but it's so worth that journey. So once you get that basic stuff out of the way, then you'll be ready for whatever other wonderful things that show up, because a lot of wonderful things will show up. And again, that's not a mystical thing. It's just you've gotten out of your own way. That's what it means on the practical level. We're okay? So, okay, well, I thought what we could do, because I can give some exposition here, I can talk about GTD and how wonderful I think it is, but I thought I could give you 5 minutes with the brain behind the brain for your brain, David Allen. So without further ado, here's David's going to talk to us for a couple of minutes from London. Let's give him an applause. Let's welcome David.
Well, hello, Frody. If you think I'm just one more thing.
What's that?
Oh, I see. I'm hopefully just, by the way, I'm the voice of everybody's conscience. This is not really David Allen. Actually, I was just watching you on my laptop here in London, Frody. Great job. Want a job, by the way?
Thanks.
You could teach and coach this stuff. I wouldn't have anything to say that you haven't said very well already. But first of all, I'm absolutely delighted to be virtually in Oslo. I've been there physically once not too long ago. It's an absolutely stunningly gorgeous city, and would love to be able to come back when I can. I think this is exciting that the Tweetup has organized a bunch of GTD, at least curious folks, if not people who've already sort of signed off on that. Just a couple of words that I'd like to share with you just in terms of what's on my brain now about GTD and the fact that it has become something of a worldwide phenomenon. I'm somewhat bemused by that in a way. As I say, sometimes it depends on which side of the bed I get up on in the morning. You know, some part of me says, well, look, only 1.5 million people have read my book. There's still 6 billion people to go. Why won't they wake up? Another part of me is kind of surprised that anybody catches this because, in a way, it's very subtle. Some of the things, as you noticed, that Frody was talking about and what GTD talks about are very simple. They're all behaviors we actually all do. So in a way, the good and bad news about GTD is you don't have to learn anything new like a new technology or a new language. You actually have all the right behaviors too. Everybody knows how to write things down and does from time to time. Everybody knows how to make the action decision about what's physically next on this thing. Everybody knows how ultimately to sit down and get themselves to define what does done mean and what is the project here. And everybody knows how to, you know, write things onto lists and from time to time look at the list and decide what to do. So in a sense, the crazy thing about this is there are no new behaviors involved in GTD. What is very new is doing it completely and being able to then essentially externalize the remember and remind function into an external system. But actually everybody knows that as well. The one thing that has probably not been distracting any of you since you've been sitting, you know, in the room here since you started, one place most of your minds has probably not gone is where do you need to be 2 weeks from Tuesday at 3:15 in the afternoon? And the reason is that some part of you trusts that that data is in the right place and a place that you will engage with physically with the appropriate behavior, so your mind gets to let that go. Now, you haven't finished that. It's still upcoming. But you don't have to finish things to get them off your mind. So everybody actually has at least one good example, assuming that you trust your calendar or your diary, and most people, most professionals certainly do. But there's no difference between that and GTD. It's just that 95% of the commitments you make with yourself are not calendar items. The other issue, too, is that by the time things get to your calendar, oh, that's a meeting I need to have with Jose and Julia. By the time it gets to that level, the action has already been determined. So there's no more work there, or not much anyway, to determine, well, the action is I need to be at that place at that time, and I have a tool that I can park that reminder, and I have the habit of looking at my calendar. Because, you know, early on you probably learned if you don't look at your calendar and you miss a key appointment, the negative feedback is pretty dramatic. So, you know, that pain can cause you to learn a behavior pretty well. So I better look at my calendar and I'd better trust that. So if you expand that to say, well, gee, wouldn't it be nice if my whole life were off my mind? No kidding. But, you know, this is not something new. So all I did was in GTD and all the years I've been researching this was just evaluating what are the behaviors that we do, the practices we engage in that allow us to offload the pressure, that constant remember, remind, don't forget, not only remember and remind, but how do I see it all in a larger context, which the short-term memory and which your conscious mind cannot do very well. And zillions of studies have proved that. And you all have personal experiences that your psychic RAM space is really a very bad office with very limited space. So the very simple idea of how do I then externalize all of my commitments that I'm aware of, how do I clarify exactly what they mean in